Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, and we'll continue with 100 days of DevOps. Today is day 33, and we're going to look at one of the most important concepts and the most centralized concept when it comes to DevOps, and that is CI/CD. So today I'm going to take my time to kind of explain what it means. We won't be having any hands-on today. That will be tomorrow when we start setting up our tools. But before then, I just want to ensure that we have a good knowledge of what we are going into, because it's going to be an interesting journey from here on. So now, going straight into what we have for today, what exactly is CI/CD? Now, CI/CD is basically it covers, or it contains two parts, as you might want to call it. The first part is the CI. CI is basically continuous integration. I'm going to explain what all of this actually mean. Why CD has two parts. There is CD is continuous delivery or deployments, and I'm going to also explain why there are two parts: the delivery and then the deployment. So I'm going to start with continuous integration. So what continuous integration means is that it's like the process of checking out your code base, checking out your any changes that have been made to your application, right? So what it does is that it will look at your code, it will test it, it will run some unit tests, it will run some static code analysis, check for some vulnerability issues, and once all of that is sorted out and your application has passed all of these stages, what it now does is that it builds an artifact, or like an image, and then it sends it to your repository. So basically that is what continuous integration actually does. What it does is it automates the process of building your application. If you've been following all of this while, before we started CI/CD, we were talking about containerization, right? And then we had to manually, build our Docker images and all of that. We started by using normal Docker, where we build our image manually, and then we use the CLI, that's command line, to actually spin up containers, right? And after that, we said, okay, there was a better way to actually do it, where we automate all of this, reduce manual effort, by introducing Docker Compose. And we were able to see how Docker Compose worked. We were able to set it up and even use it for our project. So now we are going a step further, in the case where we don't even have to build our images ourselves. We can automate all of that. So that is what CI/CD has come to do, and that is why it stands at the core of DevOps. Everything about DevOps basically revolves around CI/CD. So if you check on any job description, if you go online, check any LinkedIn, any website, one of the things that they will ask you as a DevOps engineer has to do with CI/CD, because DevOps is about automation, and CI/CD stands as the heart of automation. So yeah, what CI does is basically it checks your code, and once some processes has been passed, it builds your image and then it sends it to your repository. It could be a private repository like ECR, that's Azure Container Registry, and ECR for AWS, or it could be a public repository like Docker Hub and the likes. So after that, then we are now looking at continuous delivery and deployment. Basically, both have to do with deploying your application to your environment. Both the continuous delivery and continuous deployment have to do with deploying your application to your environment. The difference between a delivery and a deployment is when it comes to approvals. For deployment, when we talk about deployment. Once your CI, because there are two, the CI and the CD, they are two different processes. CI is different from CD, right? So once CI has been completed, if you're implementing a deployment, a continuous deployment, then once CI is completed, it automatically deploys to your environment. So there's no manual interference when it comes to continuous deployment. Why, when it comes to continuous delivery, once CI has been passed, there has to be like a manual approver. Let's say, for example, maybe your head of department, or maybe someone with a high ranking. Once CD has been completed, so you need someone to actually look into it and then say, all right, I approve. So that's the difference between continuous delivery and continuous deployment. So I hope that is actually understood. So if I'm going to summarize it, basically CI/CD just helps to automate the delivery of your application from the developer's perspective, or from the developer's end down to the customer. It automates changes. So if you make a change to your application, all you need to do is just maybe you push it to GitHub, which is our version control, and CI/CD picks it up from there, depending on how you have set it up, depending on the tools that you have set up. So I believe that I've been able to define and explain, give a summary of what CI/CD means. So now let's look at these processes one after the other. We'll look at the continuous integration. Like I said, it has a set of processes, right? And I'm just going to let me see if I can get the process or display the process of the CI. So I'm going to talk about CI now. So now you're a developer, as a developer, or you're working with a team of developers, and then someone makes a change, right? Remember yesterday I talked about versioning, how to properly tag your image, right? So all the developer does is the developer makes a change, and the developer pushes it to your version control system, which let's assume that it is GitHub, right? So now what the CI tool does is that it picks up that change from the GitHub repository. So what it does is let me just give a list. I want to itemize the things that CI actually does. So what the CI does is that, first of all, it checks out the code checkout. So it checks out the code from your GitHub repository, pulling all of the changes. Maybe it has been configured to work on maybe on the main branch or any branch that your company is working on. So what it does is that it checks out the code from the main branch. Then what it does next is it does unit testing. So basically what unit testing means is that, let's say, for example, writing maybe an addition function or a subtraction function where A plus B is equals to C. So there's a kind of a test where it just does one or two tests to really confirm if I plug a number as A and I plug a number as B, would it actually give me the correct answer as C? So that's like a brief summary of what unit testing actually means. So after that, once it has passed that, it goes to the next stage, which is your static code analysis. Static code analysis. So I'm just listing what should be in your CI process. So this is something that you have to really pay attention to. So it does static code analysis. What this actually means is basically checking for syntax error, checking for indentation, checking for your formatting. Just make sure that the code, there are no how will I put it now? There are no mistakes, or there are no errors, indentations in the code. Sometimes, especially some of us that work with AI, where we kind of get some snippets of our code from AI, we need to be sure that what we are getting is the correct thing. So in a way, The CI/CD also helps us to make sure that we are pushing the best image to the public, because you don't want a case where you push out, images that are shabby to the public, and then you paint yourself a bad image, right? So that's what static code analysis does. It basically just checks for spelling errors, syntax errors, formatting errors, indentation errors, which are really, really important. So once that has been passed, then it moves to vulnerability scanning. So what this actually means is, most of these applications that we build, they have a base image. For example, if you are building a Python or a Node.js application, they have a base image. The base image can be Python. It can be Python 10, Python 13, and depending on the one you choose. So each base image has its own libraries, has its own dependencies. So basically now we are doing the image scan. What it does is that it scans the image that has been used. Before now you've defined your Docker file, right? You must have your Docker file. So it goes through everything. Remember that this CI has access to your GitHub repository. So, and definitely your Docker file is in your GitHub repository. So it looks at that. It looks at the image. It looks, okay, are there any updates? Are there any things that could actually cause issues with this image, with the base image? Or is there something that is in your Docker file that is actually having an issue? This vulnerability scanning, it's peculiar to your Docker file, right? It's peculiar to your Docker file, not necessarily your code. Your code has been checked out and has been tested, and static code analysis has been done on the changes that have been done. So vulnerability scanning pertains to your image. So it scans everything and it ensures that you're not pushing any image that has vulnerability. I don't know if you understand that. So I believe I've been able to do justice to that. So once it has done vulnerability scanning, now we've done 3 forms of testing. 2 testings were done on the code base, and 1 has been done on your image. So that is a way of ensuring that you have good security measures in the images that you push to the public. So once that has been done, then it builds image. That's when your image is being built. That's where your Docker build comes in, or depending on the tool that you are using. So it builds the image. After building the image, it pushes to your repository. And this is where CI stops. CI stops when your image has been pushed to repository. Now there's a concept now that introduces an extra step to your CI, which is GitOps. So a quick talk on that. I'm not really going to dwell on GitOps. Probably we'll have another a separate session for that. But basically GitOps is you're making your Git repository the source of truth. So you install an agent maybe on your cluster, and then the agent checks your GitHub repository. So it is what is in your GitHub repository that your environment will look like. It's like the environment will always be in sync with your GitHub repository. So whatever is in your GitHub repository is how your environment will look like. That might not make sense right now, but when I talk about it, you get more clarification. So with GitOps, you have an extra step, which is to update. Now this one is pushed to container repository, while this would now update GitHub repository. But this only pertains to GitOps. So when you're working with GitOps, there's an extra step. So your CI would also update your GitOps repository. Yes, but without GitOps, in your traditional CI/CD, your CI process stops when your image has been pushed to your container repository. So For your CD, which is both continuous deployment and continuous delivery, it only does one thing. It only just deploys to your environment. The bulk of the work is done by your CI. What your CD does is just to deploy to your environment. So let me just do CI steps. CI steps. So this is what CI does. And then CD steps. So what it does is deploy to environment. So your environment can be AKS, which is your Azure Kubernetes service. It can be EKS. It can be bare metal. It can be bare metal VMs or bare metal Kubernetes, whatever your environment is that you have, whatever you've defined as your production environment. So that is what CD will do. So basically, we are looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, about just 8 steps for your entire CI/CD process, and this is how things get automated in a real environment. So your CI does bulk of the work, then your CD only deploys to your environment. So now there are different tools out there. People have preferences of what tools they use. Some tools are peculiar for CI. Some tools are peculiar for CD. Some tools can handle both. I'll give an example, and I'm going to tell you the one we are going to be using, or the ones we are going to be using, as the case may be, going forward. So we have tools like, the first I want to mention is Jenkins. Then we have GitHub Actions, GitHub Actions. We have GitLab. We have Bitbucket. We have Flux CD. We have Argo CD. So it just depends on which you prefer. So we are going to work with, of all I've mentioned, we are going to work with 2 or 3 of these tools, just to ensure that we are vast in what we are doing. So some tools are specifically for GitOps. Tools like Argo CD and Flux CD. You can see from their name, you would see that they are only for continuous delivery. Then we also have, I forgot to mention, CircleCI. So you'll see things, some of them, their names are already explained, they are self-explanatory. You can see things like Flux CD, things like Argo CD, they are specifically designed for continuous delivery. Then we can have CircleCI. CircleCI is basically for continuous integration, right? Then I think Jenkins, you can use Jenkins for both CI and CD. However, it's preferred for CI process, yes. Then I think GitHub Actions can also be used for no, GitHub Actions is for CI, yes. It's for continuous integration, not continuous delivery. So different tools have different use cases. So for this whole session, or for this our journey so far, we're going to be working with Jenkins as our primary CI tool. We might also work with GitHub Actions for CI, because personally I prefer GitHub Actions, right? Because it's more easy to maneuver, and you don't have to do so much setup, you understand. But for the sake of learning, because most times it is good to learn from Jenkins, is more or less like a legacy CI/CD tool. So it's good to start from that, from the base. So when you have a good knowledge of Jenkins, then you can as well still work with the others. So we are going to start with Jenkins. At some point, we might bring in GitHub Actions, and then we are definitely going to work with Argo CD when we start integrating GitOps and CI CD. So this particular session, this phase is basically going to be more of CI. So I'm giving an introduction of CI CD so that we'll have like a general overview of how CI CD works. But this particular phase is more of CI. So we'll be looking at Jenkins basically. We'll look deeply into Jenkins, and then we may also look at GitHub Actions, because these are the predominant CI tools that we are going to be working with. So when we get to the CDs, we'll have another phase, which is the GitOps phase, where we'll now integrate CI and CD. Since from what I've explained, CI does most of the work, CD basically just deploys. So it's good for us to have like a separate phase for CI, and then we can now look at another phase for CD, where we join both CI and CD together. So just to round up, I think that's basically what I have for us today. It's just a preparatory video. So in summary, what we've done is I've been able to explain what CI/CD is. I've been able to explain the two areas of CI/CD, which is the CI and the CD, and what each aspect does. And I've also been able to list or highlight the steps of each processes. And then we've also given examples of tools that can be used for CI/CD. Then there are some tools that are preferred for CI, while some tools are preferred for CD. So going forward, we would be testing a few of these tools like I've mentioned. So that will be all for today. Tomorrow, what we're going to do tomorrow is basically we'll start with Jenkins, and we'll set up Jenkins and see, and I will just run us through the Jenkins user interface and how it works. So for those that, I hope you've been able to gain one or two things. I hope I've been able to explain a few things concerning CI/CD. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop it in the comments. I'll be in the comment section, and I'll really be glad to answer your questions and clarify whatever thing that might be a confusion to you. And if you're seeing my video for the first time, what we are trying to do here is that we are trying to cover basic things about DevOps from basic to advanced, so that anybody who is interested, anybody seeing the videos, anybody who wants to go into tech and they're considering, okay, let me go into DevOps, so they have something that they can actually use as a guide, so that we don't go all over the place. So you just have like a guide coupled with some other videos, other channels too. You can always combine, and then hope that your journey is actually smooth. So if you've enjoyed the explanations of what I've done today, you can please forward the videos to anybody who's interested. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to my channel, and most importantly, kindly turn on your notification bell, so when I upload tomorrow's video, you're able to get it firsthand, and then you're able to go with me on this journey. So if you have any comment, any contribution, any place you feel like I can also improve on, please do well to also drop it in the comments. Your comments really mean a lot to me, and it's going to help me to improve on my own presentation. So thank you all for sticking with me till this very moment. Enjoy the rest of your day. Cheers.